Now we'll move on to our afternoon plenary, and thanks to our panel and panelists and moderator for accommodating a reorganization of schedule due to our missing keynote speaker, still from this morning, somewhere in New York maybe. And so I want to open by saying that Canadian Gaming Association has been very proud of its working relationship with Global Gaming Women, an organization that brings together women from all segments of the gaming industry in an effort to enrich their personal lives. It was established by the AGA to create a broad network that allows peers to connect with their colleagues. The goal is for female gaming professionals to learn from one another, create lasting connections, and nurturing women leaders. And we are very proud that with the Canadian Gaming Association, the Canadian Gaming Summit, have worked together with Global Gaming Women for the last number of years on various program sponsorship of social events and other things. And this year, once again, we're extremely pleased to be able to say we're co-sponsoring with the Canadian Gaming Association and Global Gaming Women our opening reception this evening on the floor. And we're also grateful that the efforts of the Canadian member of the Global Gaming Women Board of Directors, Helen McMillan, who has been able to spearhead and also bring together this afternoon a really fantastic panel that we're happy to share with everyone now, because Helen has put together a really terrific panel of people. I'm going to let her do more formal introductions, of her panelists. But I'd like to now welcome Helen McMillan and the panel to present their session on how collaboration leverages the opportunities technology brings to casino operations. Please welcome Helen McMillan and her panel. And panel.
Thank you.
All yours. Very good. All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Good afternoon. Just let the panel get settled. So just quickly, the topics we'll talk about this afternoon. I'll do a quick introduction of our fantastic panel. We'll talk a little bit about the topic itself. We will also have for you, as I think Chuck mentioned, the PowerPoint presentation will list out a checklist for you at the end of the presentation, and I'm happy to send that to you, or you can wait for the link after the summit. And then we'll have a quick Q&A. I think we're a bit tight for time. We've got a hard stop, I think, at 2:30. Yeah? Okay, so your panel. First of all, I'd like to introduce you to Kath Burns. She's the Senior Vice President of Gaming Systems at Scientific Games. She's a world leader in content, technology, and solutions for gaming, lottery, and interactive customers. And prior to that, Kath was a partner at Parta Solutions, the leading advisory firm that provides services to the interactive real money and social gaming industries. She's kind of smart, you might take from that. Prior to joining Partas, Kath also was the CEO of TCS John Huxley, a leading gaming equipment manufacturer and supplier. And prior to that, she served as Vice President of Asia Pacific for Bally Technologies. So very well versed in the topic that we're going to talk about today. She was honored with a 2008 Great Women of Gaming Proven Leader Award and Leader of the Year for Land-Based Gaming at the Women in Gaming Awards 2013. In 2009 and 10, she was listed in the top 50 most influential people in Asian gaming. She has graduated from the Flinders University of South Australia with a BA in History and American Studies, from Central Connecticut State University with a Master's in International Studies. Please welcome Kath. We also have with us today Karen Gray. She's a pioneering marketing expert and an industry leader who specializes in crafting innovative player strategy and transforming businesses. And she holds a Bachelor of Commerce and a Master's degree of Marketing with an MBA. She heads up the corporate marketing and engagement for British Columbia Lottery Corporation. And today, Karen is on a mission to transform the way business people think about responsible gambling. Her casino marketing and slots management experience gives her unique insights into how gambling businesses can drive performance while focusing on the health of their players. Welcome, Karen. Also with us is Carrie Kormos from Gateway Casinos and Entertainment. And Carrie has been working with Gateway since 2014, overseeing marketing, branding, communications, and corporate social responsibility for properties and restaurants across Canada. She has worked in the gaming industry for almost 20 years, so you started obviously when you were 12 or 13. She served as Chief to Staff of the Ontario's Gaming Minister, and she was also National Brand Manager or Brand Director for Magna Entertainment. Please welcome Carrie. And as Paul mentioned, I am Helen McMillan. I'm the founder and principal advisor for All in Gaming and Hospitality Advisory Group, and also an extremely proud member and proud to represent Canada at the table of Global Gaming Women. So thank you for that, Paul. So our topic today talks about how collaboration leverages opportunities that technology brings to casino operations. And as an advisor, I work in North America, sometimes internationally as well. And what's interesting, part of my job most times is to do a mystery shop of the casino and guest experience or the customer experience. And technology is everywhere and in various degrees and levels, from player kiosks and player club sign-up areas and slot technology and so forth. But what's interesting is that all casino operations who I've worked with, whether it's in Nova Scotia, British Columbia, or Singapore, all share the same challenges when it comes to technology. So these are organizations that have a few $1 million to spend in technology or multi-billions of dollars in profitability. It's interesting that they share a very similar experience in the challenges when it comes to the executional piece of their technological investments. So some of the things that we're going to talk about today, I'm going to ask the group some questions very specifically around their experience and around this topic. So I'm going to ask Carrie the first question. And Carrie, what are the two key factors that keep technology, in your experience, from having the impact that's desired or expected?
Thanks for the question, Helen. I did some thinking on this as we were preparing for today's discussion, and I thought I would tackle it maybe from the point of view as a marketer, not necessarily someone who is an IT professional. But when we look at introducing a major new platform in our business, whether it's a POS or a GMS system, I think it's really important that you have a very broad and well-informed stakeholder group internally, and that they clearly understand the rationale and the expected business impact of the IT project. I think it's too easy for folks in finance or marketing or other aspects of the business to just pigeonhole a large IT project as IT's responsibility. Right. We all have a role to play. These projects impact the success of all of our business segments, and we need to be at the table, and we need to be well informed and participate. And the second factor I would offer is that when you're looking at these large projects and IT initiatives, I think patience is always a very important ingredient to have on hand, because nothing, and I'm sure Kath has some stories that she could offer. These plans often get changed midstream. There will be changes and challenges alike, and I think it's really important that everybody approaches it with a healthy dose of patience and understanding, and realizes that the tremendous impact it will have on the business once you get on the other side.
I think that's really well said and well captured. And I think what we're talking about today is specific to technology projects, but generally speaking, I think some of the things that you're going to hear today and that our expert panel will talk about, you can take that to other projects or other philosophies within your own business practice or within your organization for sure. And Karen, I'm going to ask you about your best practices. How have you moved forward within your organization to remove some of those sometimes silos that happen within our organizations, intentionally, mostly not, but the marketing, finance, IT, food and beverage operations teams are always on the same page, said no one ever, basically, right? So if you can provide us with some insight as to how you've managed to pull the important teams together and some of the philosophies and practices that you instill.
Thanks for that question. So it's interesting. I've been in the position a number of times throughout my career where I've needed to bring multiple teams together, and One of the things that I always think about right from the start is what is it that we're trying to achieve? So what's the end goal? Where is it we're trying to head? And being very clear with the team about the direction we're heading and what each of our accountabilities is in getting to that direction. Other things that are really important: shared communication, shared ownership of objectives. I made this up on the plane yesterday. It's this idea of forcing people to be uncomfortable. So Helen and I had a conversation about a situation I was in a few years ago where I had two teams that needed to come together to collaborate on a particular project, and Team A said about Team B, "Oh, I don't even want to be with those people. I don't really know who they are. Please." And so the way that we worked our way through that was having a very clear idea of where we were heading, and then forcing people into an uncomfortable situation where they had to have the difficult conversations, because I really do believe that difficult conversations and difficult situations are the things that actually propel you forward a whole lot more. And something that I picked up from John just in his little speech earlier was this whole idea of focusing on shared value. So there can't be winners or losers. There has to be something that we share as we go forward together.
Absolutely, and I think, as I mentioned, whether it's a technological program or approach, or defending your capital budget for the next couple of years, having a vision at the end of the road of where you want to be, and we've talked about this before. I mean, that can be applied to anything in life or in your profession. And Karen has a wonderful analogy, personal story that really speaks to working towards that end destination. And it's about not just your journey. It's about the journey for sure, but it's what are we working towards, and what is the roadmap leading us to? If you will.
For sure. So last year I had a milestone birthday, and I'll leave you to guess which one it was. And so as part of this milestone, my family and I celebrated by walking a thing called the Camino de Santiago. It's a 799-kilometre walk that starts in southern France. You go over the Pyrenees and then all the way across the top of Spain until you eventually get to Santiago de Compostela, which is on the west coast of Spain. And it's a really long way. 799 kilometres is a very long way. And it's
with two teenagers.
Oh, with two teenage girls, yes. With no Wi-Fi. And so 799 kilometres it's a very difficult thing to get yourself up for. And so people have said to me, how did you keep yourself going? How did you make that journey? Weren't you bored? How did you keep going? And really the answer to that question is that right at the beginning of the walk, we all went all in. So we all decided, okay, this is going to be a successful trip if we enjoy the journey, but if we all get to stand at Santiago de Compostela. And so we were able to picture what the endpoint looked like. And we all had this picture in our head of the selfie in front of the church. And then it just became a matter of chunking out every day and being very clear about what steps we needed to take to get to Santiago. So
very, very relevant to
I think it's a really
the
relevant
topic.
story.
Yeah, very much so. Thank you for sharing. I love that story. Kath, you're on the supplier vendor side, obviously, and you work very closely with your business partners, with your customers, to make sure that they're successful. What are some of the things that you have your customers focus on? Like, where do you put their focal point? How do you guide them through long processes, help them be patient, help them think about the end goal or the end destination? What are some of the things that you do to work with your customers?
I think we've touched on many of the key points.
Okay.
Stakeholder engagement,
Yes.
right? It is a business project always. IT executes, but the business is the one that sets the requirements. So I think stakeholder engagement, clear guidelines, clear expectations. What does it look like at the end? What are we looking like? And then finding the right people to execute. So the right people to execute, and then constant communication. And communication that's proactive, not always reactive, ahead of the curve on each part of it. But I think without all of the elements that that we've all touched on now, you can't execute any project successfully. There'll always be changes, there'll always be mismatch of requirements, because that's just normal on any project. So it's just getting the right people in the room with the right goals, the right expectations, and then I think to the key point, when you get to something contentious,
Yes.
that's often the tough one, and it's really just about being blunt and direct on what the issue is and driving through it.
Right. Very good. Thank you. And Karen, we talked a bit about when we were having previous discussions, and I think Carrie, you touched on it as well. And it's not just about IT and marketing, or it's not just about the IT group. There are many stakeholders within the organization that need to be involved in preliminary discussions throughout the processes, and definitely at the, looking at the results. Question for you, Karen. Finance and HR, do they have any involvement? What's the value or the importance of having those two folks, representatives at the table?
So it's not intuitive that you would include HR and finance in a conversation up front when you're making a capital ask. But one of the processes that we follow is that when we make a capital ask, we have a checklist of people in the organisation that we need to run through, and just to make sure that they're giving us information and advice that can help us make the best decisions. So, for example, if I'm making a capital ask to put in a new GameSense Information Centre, then HR will be closely involved because there'll be some kind of personnel ask. Finance will be included because they're going to help us make much better decisions than if we just do it in Excel on our desk.
Right.
So I think that it's really important to talk to all of these stakeholder groups, and then as you get closer to decision point, take that information and then make a really tight and small, active, nimble group, and then use those to move on.
I think that's a great point. Small, active, nimble group. And in my experience also with HR, having HR at the table for projects such as technology-based projects, it's about also how does that fit into the people and culture, the culture of the organization, both from the customer or the guest experience perspective and the employee perspective as well. And finance, of course, has to write the checks, so that's always good to have them at the table. And Carrie, we had talked a bit about, in preparation for our call, you talked about, as you look at these projects from a marketing perspective, and certainly you hit a really, really important point, which is everything is thought about from the player or from the customer perspective. As a marketer, that comes naturally, but maybe for some other parts of the organization that may or may not be at the top of their mind. Is there any thought that you have, or any sort of best approach that you've considered to help your team, your project team for lack of a better term, stay focused on the customer experience or the player experience?
Well, customers are the ones that keep the lights on. So it's always important to make sure that we view things from a customer experience and really take the feedback, because there's lots of times where suppliers and customer or clients get together and we can dream things up together that we think are really going to be home runs for our customers, but the implementation of it or the execution of it doesn't always necessarily translate, and it's important to be continually getting that customer feedback to understand how they're interacting with the platform, what they like, what they don't like. Listen to them and then respond and really show them, and I think that's really important, because this day and age with apps and social gaming and online gaming and GMS and the convergence of all of that into the customer and gaming experience, it's really important as it's evolving so quickly that we're staying in tune to what our customers are saying and reacting to give them that customer service through those technological touch
I think
points.
that's really, really well said, and oftentimes people who aren't actually facing the customer, so frontline folks always have good insight into our customer behavior, but not always people who are back of house have that perspective. So I think as the marketing person, you providing that to your team provides you with an opportunity to be more effective with your project and technology, for sure. Kath, I didn't ask you this question before, but when you're working with your customers, in Canada specifically, we have a number of stakeholders, maybe a bit different from US customers. How do you advise or guide your customers through that? I think Carrie mentioned sort of a stakeholder engagement and relationship piece. How do you provide them with some guidance around that?
So depending on what the discussion point is, there's always a lead person that's managing the relationship, the requirements of the relationship, and how it needs to be executed and delivered. And they're the core person that we'll build an entire team around. And we do it through a client services division that has customer success managers. And they're the people that we want front and center engaged in that discussion. And to Kerry's point, for us, it's all about delivering customer experience. And the DNA of systems has started really at what in today's world is quite simple. It's a loyalty card. But really, if you fast forward to what we're seeing now, it's a whole different version.
Right.
And loyalty cards are almost passé right now. So we look at the entire engagement and experience and go, how do we get connected to technology that will deliver those experiences, empower our teams as well to help deliver those experiences, and even think about it. So even with our own teams now, we sit down and look at a customer journey map. And a customer to us is the operator's end customer,
Sure.
right? So, and then also we focus on the employees at the operator level.
Yeah.
So we're constantly looking at ways to improve both levels of engagement. We want the employee at the operator side to be actually freed up to look after their customers.
Right.
So we take an approach with everything that we do to incorporate that into design and service.
Right.
So, and constantly improving it. And one thing that we're doing at the moment is we're using predictive analytics, right? So the first time that's coming into our systems to help identify players and look at them and take that feedback and put it back in a feedback loop. We also want to know if someone has an Instagram moment, right? You know, if that Instagram moment goes viral and it can promote from a marketing aspect, we should be embedding that as well. So we're looking at all of those things now and bringing them in. We're at the first stage here of delivering what I would call the first marketing loyalty part of that. But as we go on, they're the sort of things that we'll do to drive that level of engagement.
So you take an extremely holistic view then of your customers'
Yes.
business and their business model, their objectives, where they need to go, and stakeholders. You probably would do some presentations or education for stakeholders, that type of thing.
We do.
Okay, right.
We do.
And so it really is beyond just a buyer-seller relationship. Is that fair to
Correct.
say?
It's got to be consultative,
Yes,
right? Not
right.
everybody's the same, and even in
Right.
Canada, it's not the same.
Right.
So you have to understand the unique requirements of the model.
Yes.
Once you understand the requirements of the right model, it's delivering it the right way.
Right, perfect. Thank you so much. And as a takeaway, as I mentioned, we can provide this information to you. We'll have a quick Q&A in a few minutes here. But some of the things that I've captured that our three expert panelists have discussed and talked about is you need a champion or a leader for your project. Someone has to own whatever that project is, be the owner. A project plan, which includes a communications plan. Also, same page in your stakeholders, which we talked about, working closely with your business partners and vendors, making it meaningful, or for the people that are involved in the project, what's important to them, why are they involved, and what's important, and what's in it for me. So, at times we select people to work on a project for their own professional development. We've talked quite a bit about putting people in uncomfortable places where they're not, it's a place that they're not usually accustomed to, but it stretches them as an individual, probably develops some skill set that they didn't necessarily have before. Working closely with your business partners and your vendors, making it meaningful, which we talked about. Identifying pain points that prevent things from getting done. And Kath, you mentioned, sometimes there's usually an issue somewhere along the line, and how do you work through that? Creating checkpoints for your project development, being open and ready to reset or course correct. I attended a a session earlier with Atlantic Lottery this morning. They talked about it took them 5 years from conception to execution, but considering their massive stakeholders and complexities of their business, it actually didn't seem that long of a time. But so being able to maneuver through your challenges along the way, being available as this transpires, doing a review after the fact, after the install, after you're seeing some results, is not often done by organizations, and it's extremely valuable. And I'm also a very big proponent of celebrating wins, and I think we've agreed to that as well. So that's your checklist, and if you have any questions for the panel, we have a few minutes left to answer any of those. Crickets, my favorite.
Or slot machines in the background.
Yes, we're all distracted by the slot machines. Did anyone in the panel have anything additional to add before we wrap up? No? We covered everything? I think one thing that, Karen, you did mention for me is creating that roadmap or the path. So having the objective, whether it's a Post-it note on the top of your whiteboard, but having a very clear roadmap that you can provide and have a visual for people so that they can understand where that's going. Okay, if there's no questions, thank you for attending. Thank you very much to these wonderful colleagues from our gaming industry, the experts of our industry, for your time in preparation and your flexibility with the change in schedule today. So I appreciate it very, very much. Thank you very much.
You want a photo of the panel? Thank you very much, everybody, and I want to thank Helen and Kath, Karen, and Carrie for a great panel. We do appreciate it. There's coffee and dessert on the trade show floor. Don't forget your 50/50 tickets, and our opening reception later on late this afternoon. We look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you very much.